echoes and all, we're going to just continue on here and just kind of make it happen. So really quickly, what I'd like to do is just kind of welcome everyone in to Flemma Chats. My name is Josh Fleming. The whole idea of creating this podcast, doing this, is to either celebrate something that someone wants to speak about that they're very excited about, or to shine a light on an issue that needs to be addressed. And so what better subject to talk about than the one we're going to talk about today with Hannah. So Hannah, if you wouldn't mind, the first thing I'd like to do is just kind of have you introduce yourself to everybody. Let us know who you are, what your role is here in this, and then we'll kind of move on to the subject at hand. So by all means.
Sure. So hi, I'm Hannah Kolbeck. I'm in Portland, Oregon, and I am a software developer that took an interest in accessibility because I was terrible at it, and decided that, hey, I know how to work an API. I can make this better. So that was about 2 years ago. And I've been working on accessibility bots on Twitter, other accessibility projects, and yeah, that brings us to today with the likely upcoming end of those bots.
Sure. And so that's what happened. So a friend of mine, Sleep Easy, he should be in the chat here with us. He brought this to my attention. He showed me the tweet that you had mentioned about wanting to speak out to people and let people know about what's going on with your bot specifically. And I also saw, and I made sure to put this in the overlay here. So the hashtag Save Ally Bots was also a big part of this conversation. And I wanted to kind of ask you a little bit.
Really quick.
Yeah.
It's a bit confusing, but sure. A11Y
yes.
Stands for accessibility.
Oh, okay. Well, that's perfect. Hey, it's part of the clarification, part of the process there. So
it's confusing as hell. I'm not that fond of it, but you do what you got to do.
Right. Whatever gets traction and starts going, right, you kind of roll with it. Absolutely. I totally understand that. I wanted to ask a little bit about that as well. So how did that start? Were you a part of that process when it began? Did you jump on to that hashtag itself? You know what I mean? Kind of boost up yours as well?
Sure. I didn't start it. Some other folks did, but it was mostly started in the replies and the quote tweets of my bot, of caption. Uncertainty rolling out.
Sure. Okay, sorry, they lost you. I apologize for that. I was trying to tinker and fix it, but can you repeat that, what you just said? I do apologize.
Maybe my memory is bad.
No, it's okay. So Save A11Y Bots, you said that you use that hashtag to kind of boost your own the bot that you had. Yes.
So other folks started this hashtag, but it was started in the replies of my bot. It was started in the replies of Caption Clerk, which is another accessibility bot. It was started in the replies of Get Alt Text, yet another accessibility bot.
Absolutely.
And all of these bots, similar to each other, are all facing an end when the API payment or pay structure goes into effect.
And so that's another thing that I did want to talk about, and I appreciate you segueing into that, is can we talk a little bit about that as well? So this block that you guys are seeing, this payment wall basically that's being established, can you tell me a little bit about the history of that and a little bit about how it directly affects bots like yours and bots like Get Alt Text and all of them?
Yeah, definitely. So in the past, pre-Musk, Twitter did have payment plans for their API, but they affected only those endpoints, those bits of data that, say, marketers and maybe academics would be interested in. And then for academics, there was a process by which they could request access, get it for free. All of the sort of day-to-day, I want to read a tweet, I want to send a tweet, I want to send a DM, etc. All of those were free. They were rate limited, so you could only do so many of them a day, but they were free. What is being proposed, what they've said they're going to put into effect, although they've been revising things kind of at the last minute over and over again, so we'll see, is basically making everything expensive, everything paid. That was their original, the original announcement. Some folks came in, and raised the issue that this would kill a lot of popular bots on Twitter. Your possum every hour kind of bots.
Sure.
Those that create a great deal of content for Twitter. And Musk responded to that and said, "Oh, right," and proposed basically a write-only API, which is sort of a weird thing to happen, but makes sense in this case. Basically, anything. All it's doing is sending tweets. It doesn't have to read tweets. It doesn't have to do any kind of interaction with anyone on the platform. All of those are covered under this. So all of your, so and so every hour, Pepito, which is a cat that gets pictures snapped of it every time it goes in and out of its cat door. All of those should survive. They will be able to keep going. The problem is that my bot and the other accessibility bots at issue here need to read tweets as well for various reasons. It's a little bit unclear how some of these APIs will be handled, but I think the assumption is that all of them, anything that lets you read data from Twitter, will become paid. And that pay structure is incredibly steep. It's so steep that there's just no way I could crowdfund out of it.
Sure.
My bot gets called about 6,000 times a month. Last month it did, at least, and that translates to upwards of 15,000 requests to Twitter. In the new pay structure, that is an enterprise plan, where that's probably starting at around $3,000 a month, at least.
I get why you say you couldn't crowdfund that. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could crowdfund that once, let alone every. So basically, we're just out here trying to raise this as an issue, trying to get some attention, and see if we can get bots like accessibility bots that need to read from Twitter, but also are there providing a vital service to some folks on Twitter.
Sure. And that's one thing I want to talk about a little bit more too, is that service itself that is providing. So this is something that's providing stuff for people who it reads the text out to people. I heard that it also can describe article captions or things like that as well, read it out to you. Can you speak more to that a little bit more, what that service provides and what type of people or what group of people this actually speaks to and helps address?
Yeah, absolutely. So the bot can do a number of things, but I would say 95% of its usage is for optical character recognition. And that is, a technical word for basically taking an image of text and extracting the text from it.
Okay.
And that's necessary for folks with screen readers, like blind folks, to take in that information. Otherwise, Twitter provides a very helpful alt text for images with no alt text. That alt text is image,
right,
which, as you can imagine, tells you absolutely nothing about what's in the image, and tells you nothing about what the conversation that's going on is. Something that I tell people when they ask, what makes good alt text? What am I trying to do when I describe one of these images? And what I've come up with is, that fits in a tweet at least, is that you're trying to make it so that folks who can't see the image can still be full participants in the conversation. And right now, that's what this bot is enabling through multiple avenues. First, and most importantly, folks who are blind, folks who do use screen readers, can use it to pull down text out of images. Some screen readers can do this automatically built in. Because of the technology that this bot is using specifically, it tends to be better at it than even a lot of screen readers that do have this built in.
Sure.
Especially for kind of weirdly formatted text, like in columns or in a table, etc. It's not perfect by any means, but but it's about as good as you can get these
And
days.
specialized is more specific. I mean, it's seems like, right?
Yes, exactly. So that's the first group, is folks who need it in order to be on Twitter effectively.
Right.
Other groups are folks who post images of text and need to extract text to post it in, put it in the alt text. They can do all of that through DMs. So they can extract the text in DMs and then paste it in. The idea being that while you can do this via like Google Lens on Android, or I believe there's one on iOS as well,
Sure.
the idea was to enable people to never have to leave the app, because the minute you have to leave the app, it's a liminal space. You forget what you were doing, all of that.
Absolutely.
So there's folks who can see the images and want to create alt text for them. And then another major use is someone will post an image without alt text, and let's say I want to retweet it, but I have a policy that I don't retweet anything that doesn't have alt text. So I can use the bot to extract text. The bot will respond with the image with the alt text, extracted alt text added, and then I can retweet that. That is a very common use.
Yeah. And seems like one that would be used. I mean, like you're saying, common use. I mean, that feels like something that could be very like a part of somebody's everyday life. And so the functionality that we're talking about, with this being taken away, or with these paywalls being put up, and bots like yours being taken away, I'd assume that the Twitter bots themselves, the ones that exist now, do they functionally work the same way? Do they function like I guess what am I trying to say here is like, when these things are gone, what are we missing? You know what I mean? I know we've spoken a lot about it already now with the practicality of what we're missing and not getting out of the app and all of these things that it provides. But really just if you were to put it in a sentence, how does this affect people when these specific bots like yours get taken away?
It drastically reduces the accessibility of Twitter as a platform.
Sure. 100%. Absolutely. I want to make sure to kind of put an emphasis on that. And one thing that I wanted to ask as well, because I want to make sure that we keep ourselves on time, technical difficulties obviously notwithstanding. But one thing that I wanted to ask as well, and I did want to open up questions with chat if anyone has any as well. But one that I wanted to ask specifically is, what's a call to action for us? What is something that we, the average person, can do to help support or to help, speak out against these changes? What is it? What can we do? What could I do, the regular person?
Sure. I mean, the short answer is I'm not sure.
Sure.
All I've really found so far is putting out calls for people that were willing to talk about this with me. Thank you so much for being one of those people. And seeing what kind of support I can wrangle.
Sure.
For everyday folks, there's a few things you can do. You can, search for the hashtag that's up in the corner.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't remember.
Yeah, right above you. Absolutely.
And boost tweets there.
Sure.
When the Twitter dev account tweets about API pricing changes, you can respond and say, well, what about accessibility bots? When you see Elon Musk tweet, anything
help
about
us all for that one for sure. Absolutely sorry.
No, I'm
absolutely sorry. Yeah, absolutely. I felt it. I saw it all go through your eyes. I feel it 100%. But if we go on that tangent, we'll be talking forever, Hannah, for sure. I'd imagine. Absolutely. Awesome. So yeah, boosting that hashtag 100%. And then Sleep in the chat did ask. You said the 11 in the save 11 Y bots. That's you were talking about. That means accessibility. What does that 11? What does that specifically stand for? That 11.
Sure. So it's part of a trend in tech mostly,
okay.
Which I find very irritating.
Okay.
Basically, anytime there's a word that might be a little bit of a pain to spell or just long, and we use it all the time, what they'll do is they'll replace it by the first letter, the last letter, and a number that is however many letters are between.
Oh. Okay, I can see why that would be irritating. 100%. Excuse me. Yeah. Okay. So then accessibility being a 14 letter word, or no, I'm sorry, I can't do math right now. A 13 letter word, with the A and the Y being the last two. Okay, that makes some sense. Okay,
Yeah.
some sense. I mean, whoever made that, kudos to them, I guess. But that's interesting. That's hey, it's one way to handle it, I guess, right? For sure.
Unfortunately, it does exactly what we just saw. And folks who don't know what it means are sort of,
Yeah.
okay,
I just thought
so
it was
what?
a cute way to put ally. You know what I mean? That's what I thought it was. I for real,
Absolutely. And
100%.
honestly, I know what it means. And when I read it out there, my brain like initially says ally. I
Sure. Yeah.
probably because I spent too long on the internet as a
Yeah.
kid. But
Absolutely. No, no, that's 100%. I mean, that's the knee jerk for most people. So I'm glad, that is a great question, Sleep. I appreciate that. Um, so obviously, so I want to make sure that we're doing all that we can, right? So we talked about boosting that hashtag, making sure we're speaking out whenever we see those things, questioning, whoever, including Elon, about the accessibility, saying, hey, what are we doing? What can we do? Um, is there anything further that can be done outside of necessarily maybe the Twitter space? Is there anyone that we can, any person that we can talk to, or any way that we can kind of speak out about this issue in your mind or in your experience?
I mean, I've now spoken to a couple journalists
Sure,
who have either one put out an article this morning from our interview. I can link that in the chat in a second.
absolutely,
Uh, and I spoke to a journalist from the Washington Post yesterday as well.
gotcha.
Uh,
Oh, that's amazing.
so there is some attention being paid to this, but it hasn't really started rolling yet, uh, which is especially because the last announcement about the changes to the API, unlike the two before that, didn't have a date for when they would go into effect. Um, and so that makes it much more difficult to say, like, we need to get this by this time.
Sure.
But it is urgent. I
Yeah.
don't I don't have a date to give you to say, oh, here's a
Right.
deadline, but it's urgent.
It's right now.
And and the disappointing thing about that is that I don't have a good answer for you. That's a question that I'm working on a lot, and all I found is, well, provide I can give my time to speak to people.
Sure.
And yeah, so I think just being out there, being vocal, when you see when you see people kind of creating inaccessible content on Twitter, remind them, and and use the bot while it
Sure.
lasts.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Basically, you tag the bot under or on a quote tweet of a picture with an image of text and say extract text, and see what happens. Play
Awesome.
around with it.
Yeah.
See what happens.
I love
Yeah,
I love tinkering with things with technology, so that'll be fun for me to do. Clearly, obviously, my experience with echoes and voice chats don't count, for sure. But okay, so I know that we're reaching our time here. I want, or at least I want to make sure that I know that right now Zoom has like a 40-minute timer essentially that they
oh,
place on this,
gotcha.
and so what I want to do is make sure that we wrap up properly and we don't get cut off here. So
Absolutely.
one thing that I want to do,
I'm not signed into, sorry,
yeah,
I'm not signed into Twitch. I
okay,
just dropped a link to that article in the Zoom chat.
yes. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right now put that in the chat here on the actual stream itself.
Great, thank
And
you.
then I'll make sure what I'm going to try to do is whenever I post this video proper out, I'll try to first address the echo, fix that issue and make sure that that's cleared up. And then also I'll make sure to include that link in the description for that video as well. That way they have that access.
Great,
Um,
thank you.
Amazing. So, with that being said, what I'd like to do real quick is we have a call to action. I appreciate once again you, Hannah, jumping in and talking with us about this. I feel like this is a very important topic. We want to boost it as much as possible. But if there's anyone in chat that has any questions that you'd like to ask Hannah before we sign off here, I'd love to see what your input is or what your guys' thoughts are. Any questions at all there would be appreciated, or we'll try to see if we can address them. I know that Sleep had that question about that. We talked a little bit about the accessibility already. And if no one does, that's A-okay. I know that we've asked a couple already. One thing that I want to do is make sure, Hannah, is there anything else, any closing things, any statements that you want to make, anything you want to let people know before we sign off here?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I want to talk a little bit about community and
Sure.
community specifically for disabled folks.
Yeah.
One of the bits of pushback that I've gotten as I've talked about this is folks saying, well, Twitter is a dying platform. They should get off of it anyway. Who cares about accessibility on Twitter?
Right.
And the issue is community. Disabled folks, blind folks have built community on Twitter that you can't just move to Mastadon. You can't just move to co-host. Those bonds are fragile and they're really facilitated by Twitter. And that means as much as I don't like Elon Musk, I don't really like doing what amounts to free labor for Elon Musk.
Sure.
But these folks can't just go elsewhere. And what I've heard from people is that without the services of this and other bots, Twitter becomes effectively unusable for them. And that's not just oh, darn, I don't get to, doom scroll anymore.
Right.
That's severing them from community. Yeah. And especially for disabled folks who right now, because of COVID, are forced to isolate themselves quite a bit more than your average person does. Although your average person probably should more. Anyway.
For sure. Whole other topic of conversation.
Other topic.
Absolutely.
But what that means is that online community is even more important. And it would be great to move that off of Twitter, to move that out of Elon Musk's way, out of his path. But that's not so easy. That's not something that any one or even small group of folks can do. It takes the entire community choosing something, and that probably just can't happen in any kind of short enough term to not splinter if Twitter becomes an utterly unaccessible platform.
Absolutely. And that actually leads into a little bit too. And I lovely words. I appreciate what you're saying. I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying. The fact that, people talk about that a lot is like, what's the next Twitter? What's the next alternative? And it's like, it's really hard to really, truly just take everything that you've built, this whole group, this community that you're talking about, and then just shift it all of a sudden. It's not an impossible task, but a Herculean task at the very least. That leads into a question that Sleep Easy had here, and I do appreciate you again for asking, is one that I was thinking too, is like, why doesn't this already exist? I feel like we may already know the answer here, but why doesn't this already exist within the framework of Twitter proper?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to very quickly talk a little bit about a previous bot, and that was Alt Text Reminder. Sure. And basically what that did is, and that's the first bot I made, if you tweeted an image, if you signed up for his services, tweeted an image without alt text, it would send you a polite DM just saying like, hey, you forgot this time, because that's what I needed. I was constantly forgetting it. And through that, I joined a very small council of developers that was consulted by the API team at Twitter and the DevRel team at Twitter about changes. And through those connections and through the success of that bot, Twitter added that capability to the platform. The accessibility folks working at Twitter were already very conscious of this. They wanted to do it. But that external pressure did shift their roadmap. And that's something I'm very proud of.
Sure. Love that.
When slightly before Elon Musk bought Twitter, the accessibility team released a sketch of their roadmap. And on it was to investigate building OCR into the platform. When Musk bought Twitter, one of the first things he did was fire the entire accessibility team. So there was a plan. The answer is that if Twitter hadn't, if Elon Musk had not bought Twitter, I don't think it would have OCR right now, but there would be people at Twitter working toward it.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's what I was afraid the answer was going to be, for sure.
And with Elon Musk's very evident, I want to say, disdain for accessibility, I have no hope that this capability will be added by them.
Unfortunately, I do feel the same way. But that's why this is important. That's why what you're saying, what you're doing, the work that you're doing is so important and so appreciated, right? Because you don't, you see a lot of people. You don't see a lot of people doing this, speaking and advocating in the way that you are. So that's one thing I know that anybody here, but especially myself, very appreciative of the work that you're doing and very thankful that you are here doing it, still fighting the good fight, even though the circumstances have shifted like they have. I really was. I think I was talking to Steve about it a little bit, and that was what our theory was that it's just like he cleaned house, and once he cleaned house, it got, that Elon being the he that I'm talking about here, once he did that, obviously shifted these things and changed things. I didn't know that you guys were... I didn't know that things were rolling the way that they were. That makes it even that much more devastating. And I don't mean to just live in that gloom. But that's where we are, right? And that's why you're doing what you're doing. And that's why I'm trying to, do what I can to kind of boost that for you too.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Of course. Okay. So we still have, so that the timer showed up there while we were talking. We do have a couple minutes left over. If there's anything else that anyone wants to ask, or Hannah, if there's anything else that you'd like to share, one thing I'd like to do as well is make sure, that we've done the proper plugs for the things that you're doing, the places that people can go. We've already talked a little bit about boosting it on Twitter itself proper and all of that. Is there anywhere else that people can go to support you specifically?
I'm not really looking for support for myself.
Sure.
Is the short answer to that.
Okay. Absolutely. I appreciate that.
Sure. Yeah. I
would just say the work that you're doing. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I want to make sure that we're doing all that we can to help to kind of amplify you, make sure that you have a voice. You're doing so much work already on your own. But, the one important thing about any of this is that, like you said, that community, you're not alone. So if there's anything that we can do here, if I can do myself, that's one thing that we want to make sure to do. If you don't have, an answer now or anything in depth that you can think of in the moment, what we'll do is just make sure to follow up with each other. I'll make sure to follow up with you. And anybody here that would like to get a hold of Hannah, would getting a hold of you on the alt text util Twitter handle still be okay? Like if they wanted to speak with you directly?
That won't work terribly well.
Right.
Because that is a bot, and it will automatically respond to DMs with I don't understand that command.
Right.
So the easiest way is probably to contact me via an email address that I set up for this effort, which is alt-text-util@hannah.industries.
Okay, I'll make sure I'm gonna put that in the chat real quick. So that was alt-text. Can you repeat that one more time?
alt-text-util@hannah.industries.
Awesome. Fantastic. And that's hannah.industries.com. Is that right?
No.
Or just hannah.industries. I do apologize.
No worries.
Fix that.
No worries.
Don't do the .com, folks. .industries is how you can get a hold of them. There we go. Okay. Well, with that being said, we're wrapping up on our time here. Again, I want to tell you...
Another good way that you can contact me if you want something less than email. I'm at Hannah at not-ok.computer on Mastadon.
Okay. So on Mastodon, I'm going to put that in here as well. And that was... I'm sorry, one more time. I'm going to have you repeat that. So it was...
Hannah
at
not-ok.computer.
.computer. Okay, I'm gonna fix that. I just did that again. I'm hyper fixated on putting things and making them .com because I'm stuck in 2004. You know what I mean? For sure. So let me go ahead and fix that one more time and make that .computer, not .com. It's like my brain was like, okay, you did COM. Go ahead and hit enter. Go ahead and just do that real quick. Awesome. Okay, you can find you Mastodon yes.
Just the letters okay, not
just the letters okay, not okay. Thank you again. Let's do this one last time, folks. We got this. You know what I'm saying? This is
We
easy
got
stuff.
less than a minute, so just really quick.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
I will sign in and hang out in the chat for a little bit.
Okay.
And yeah, it's been great to talk to you.
It's been great talking with you too, Hannah. I do appreciate you taking the time with me. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna go ahead and just sign off here, and I'm gonna just transition on the way on the stream itself. Thank you again. All right, folks. Hang tight one second while I go on to my next scene here, because I do have an outro screen. Okay. Let me get myself here. Where am I? There I am. Okay. There we are. Can you guys hear me okay? I hope you can. I do think that it should work just fine. And those things in chat. I don't have the chat here now. Let me go ahead and just add that real quick in here. Hi, Hannah. Hello. Thank you again so much, Hannah. What you're saying, what you're talking about, I think is just so important. And again, I was really glad whenever Sleep Easy pointed you out to me, because I think that we, like, it's like you're saying, I'm gonna fixate on that for a good long time. That idea of community, right? Is that if we aren't looking out for each other in this way, if we aren't trying to think about and consider those things, it may be easy for me, it may be easy for so many people to just move on to Mastadon, to move on to one of those other programs and try to use those, and that'll open up a whole other, bunch of issues when it comes to accessibility in that regard. But for so many people, what the community that they have, that they've built, is just so important. It is so important to do everything that we can to make sure that we support it, we nourish it, we cherish it, we make sure that we're doing all that we can to support it. So again, I do appreciate so much you taking the time to speak with us, to hang out with me, and to talk about that a little bit more. Again, I'm definitely going to be bugging you myself, right? So I'm going to get a hold of you again in the near future and just kind of see if there's anything else that can be done. And if there is, I want to make sure that I'm part of the people that help you to do it. Because, once again, this is all a community. We're all gathered together to try to do all that we can to make sure that those communities aren't broken, and to make sure that people are getting the support that they need, and given the ability to do things that we often take for granted, like doom scrolling on Twitter. It's very important. It's very important, the stuff that you're doing. So I couldn't tell you again how much we appreciate, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. So that I'm gonna with that kind of just wrap things up here. That is the again, the first Flemma chats that we've done here. Again, thanks again to Hannah for coming in. Thanks to you guys for hanging out with me. I am on twitch.tv/Flemmaverse. I promise you that the technical difficulties are things that we're working through and should get better. If you could give me a follow or anything like that, that would be wonderful. Feel free to get a hold of Hannah in those places that we put into the chat as well, and give her your support, people. The whole idea of this, the whole point, is to make sure that we are doing all that we can to help people. If they shine a light on a problem and they say, hey, this is an issue, the whole idea of what I'm wanting to do, what we're trying to do here, is to go and help those people, go and address that problem, and do whatever we can, whether it's something small or whether it's something bigger, like what Hannah's doing, the work that she's doing, right? That's very important. And we may not be able to do that at that same extent. We may not have the expertise that she does, but her giving us that expertise helps us to do the little things that we can to make a little bit of a difference, right? To help to make that change happen, to make that community stronger. So again, appreciate everybody for coming out today. I'm going to close up here just to let you all know again, that's where you can find me, is twitch.tv/Flemmaverse. We are doing a book club at the end of the month on the 25th at 11 a.m. We're going to talk about V for Vendetta. If anybody's interested in talking about that as well, Hannah, if you're interested in talking with us about V for Vendetta, we're very excited. We have Ben from the Brotherhood of Batman special guest, as a guest appearance there as well, to talk about it. Very, very excited about that. But with that being said, that's it for me today. Thank you all so much again for coming. I love you all. I appreciate you all. And please be kind to each other. Do good for each other. And that's it for me.